Hey, 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 what's going on? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Wednesday and it is scheduled release day for the Baltimore Ravens. Seems like all of the news says that it'll jump off tonight at around 8 p.m. And so the goal is to get in here live tonight and talk about the schedule. Don't know the format or even the level of conversation we'll get into tonight, but we'll probably get on here 30 to 45 minutes, talk about the schedule. We already know who our opponents are, and so we will just be able to see how that schedule falls. And so got that coming up tonight, man. But as you guys know, we're in this series of conversations that we call Destination Santa Clara. Be there, right? That's what I'm saying to the Baltimore Ravens. Be there. It is the type of season and the type of roster construction with the type of athletes, the type of top level athletes that should put us in position to end up in Santa Clara. The question is, will we get there? Can we get there? Yes. Will we get there is the question, right? And so yeah, I started a little bit early because I know I got some sessions that'll be starting around 10, and then they're back to back to back all the way until 6. And so I knew I had to get a lot of conversation in this morning. And so that's why we got in here a little early. We'll probably be here about 45 minutes and get out of here. But Destination Santa Clara, avoid devastation. That is really how teams can get to a Super Bowl, right? We have several examples of teams who were not quote unquote your preseason favorite to get to the Super Bowl. They were not a top five prediction to get to a Super Bowl, but somehow, some way, they ended up in that Super Bowl. An example would be both years that the Giants made it to the Super Bowl, led by Eli Manning, and defeated Tom Brady. Another example could be the trying to think of the name of that team. I got it in my the Ravens from the last championship that we had. We were not predicted to be a Super Bowl team that season necessarily. And everything about that season said we were not going to be a Super Bowl team. You had Terrell Suggs, I believe, if I remember correctly, coming off an ACL injury. And if it wasn't an ACL, it was an Achilles. It was one of the lower body injuries that can be devastating for an athlete. And then you had Ray Lewis turn his bicep during that season. So everything about that season said no Super Bowl. And so we understand that there are many examples, even other than those, that could say, Super Bowl participant. The Los Angeles Rams, led by Jared Goff, ended up in the Super Bowl. Um, you could even say a team like Philadelphia. Philadelphia, I don't think was predicted to be a top five team to make it to the Super Bowl even last season, but they went there and won it. And so, but all signs point to the Baltimore Ravens being one of those top five teams predicted to get to a Super Bowl. And so on Monday, we talked about things that could derail us, right? On Tuesday, we talked about the advantages that the Baltimore Ravens should use. Today, we're going to talk about avoiding devastation. And the crazy thing is, the biggest news in Baltimore Ravens land right now is the Adarius Washington, unfortunately, the potential starting safety, Adarius Washington, tearing his ACL or Achilles. I can't remember which one it is. If somebody jumps in here in the live or even in the record, drop that in the comment section. But I believe it is the Achilles now that I'm thinking about it. And so it's a season ending injury for sure. I know we've seen people come back within 8 months and all that, but I don't think that's going to be the situation for our Darius Washington. And then even if he could get back to where he's practicing in 8 months, 9 months, what type of player will he be when and if he could make it to the field. 9 months from right now, give or take. This is May, middle of May. So you're looking at June 15th, July 15th, August 15th, September 15th, October 15th, November 15th, December 15th. That's the entire season. 8-month recovery is the entire season. I don't think he plays in the 2025 season. And listen, the good thing is he did sign his tender, which means some or all of that money is guaranteed. So at least he will be compensated, right? I hate to see people lose money to injury, but it's a part of the game. It's the nature of the game. And so glad to see he's going to get some money. But I think this injury may spell the end of his time in Baltimore. Not just the injury alone, but the drafting of first round pick Malachi Starks, who is now going to be assumed the starter. I know my guy Jeremiah, he said that Malachi Starks would be starter day one. But I thought with Ar'Darius Washington and his experience and the veteran nature of his play, I thought that he had a shot to kind of rotate, but it's absolutely guaranteed that Starks will be that number one guy beside Kyle Hamilton. And so big shoes for a rookie, right? To be the starting free safety on a championship level team, right? And so when you look at the Baltimore Ravens, and we're talking about avoiding devastation to a championship level team with a solid roster, a well above average roster, potential Hall of Famers at multiple positions, the most devastating thing that could happen is injuries, right? We we know that well around Ravens Nation. We remember the 2021-22 season where Lamar Jackson went down and we missed the playoffs, although we were in position at the top of the AFC. And then the second season of injury, the 22-23 season where Lamar Jackson also went down, but he had put us in position to be in the playoffs, and that was the Tyler Huntley fumble game against the Bengals. And so we absolutely know injury. And, remember that one of those years, anybody who could get hurt got hurt, right? I think that one year, I think 21-22, no, maybe it was 22-23. One of those seasons, I can't remember. Either way, we lost all the running backs. We lost Marcus Peters. I think Marlon Humphrey was hurt that season also. I mean, anybody, who could get hurt, got hurt. Ronnie Stanley was hurt again. It was just a season devastated by injury. And, it was indeed the greatness of Lamar Jackson being able to wield the team based on his athletic gifts and ability as a quarterback to keep us in some type of contention. And so when you really just think about the Ravens and you really kind of give some validity to our roster and our depth, the only real way to avoid devastation is to build high-end depth. All right. And so that's what we're going to do today is assess the depth, because unless we have a group of wide receivers who have just tons of drops, that could be devastating. Unless we have tight ends who just can't catch this year or can't block this year, unless we have an offensive line that takes a step back and can't block, right? Unless we have defenders in the front seven who can't tackle, unless we have safeties who no longer can cover, all those kind of things, those things could be devastating. But if everybody does their job on par with their ability, we should still have a solid season. The only thing that could derail it is devastating type injuries. So let's jump into this conversation today, and we're just going to assess each position and are we equipped with the adequate depth to avoid a devastating injury, because that could derail Destination Santa Clara. Okay. Start at the quarterback position. When you look at the starter, you give an A+. When you look at the backup, I think Cooper Rush is a solid backup. We know he backed up, what's that dude's name? Dak Prescott for a number of seasons in Dallas. He filled in nicely with whatever they had going on over there. I think that as long as we don't have to use him, we're in good shape, right? But if we have to use him, I think he's a guy that we can lean into. I think Cooper Rush is a guy that we can trust. And so when I assess the depth of the quarterback position, I give the quarterback starter and depth an A, right? I think we're solid and solidified at that position. I think Cooper Rush at this point in their careers is an upgrade or at least a better option over Josh Johnson. All right. That's no knock to him. I just think Cooper Rush is a little better of a player at this point. When we go to the backfield, you got Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, and Keaton Mitchell. I think Keaton Mitchell is the bonus of this group simply because last year we had really no expectation that he would even be a contributor coming off a lower body injury. Again, I get the A's mixed up. I know where they are on the body. The Achilles is the knee, excuse me, the Achilles is near the ankle and the ACL is in the knee, but I don't remember which one Keaton Mitchell had. Nevertheless, it took him out for basically a calendar year. He did get back on the field. We did see him in some spot duty, and he did show well last season. Well, by the time he gets on the field, barring any type of setback, when he gets on the field in 2025, I think he will be an upgrade of an addition over Rashawn Ali, who was at third running back last season. And so I think he can offer a different dynamic to this offense. So when I look at the starter and the depth, I think that we are in good shape. And I think that kicks Rashawn Ali onto the practice squad. And the benefit of that is that he has real NFL experience from last season. So I think that we are solid at running back. I give that room an A for the starter and its depth. When we jump to the tight end room, excuse me, it's no question it's an A plus. The Baltimore Ravens collectively have the best tight end room in the league and some of the best tight ends in the league, right? And so I give that room an A plus. The depth is solid, the starter is solid, and so there's no question about that group. Let's go outside to the wide receiver room. Of course, you all know that the wide receivers in Baltimore, or at least the wide receiving corps in Baltimore, had been a point of contention for us in Ravens Nation. We always wanted the Baltimore Ravens, EDC, John Harbaugh, to go out and find Lamar Jackson a number one level wide receiver. And whether we consider Zay a number one or not, Bateman a high level number two or not, that doesn't matter. At this point in time, going into the 2025 season, all signs point to Zay being healthy. Therefore, he can train this offseason versus rehab. Rashad Bateman is healthy. I know he did not finish the divisional round, but all signs point to him being healthy right now, which means he should be able to train versus rehab. And DeAndre Hopkins played in the Super Bowl, and he ended last season healthy, which means he could also train versus rehab. So our top three options all come into this offseason healthy. And so I give our top three an A and its depth. I'll probably give the depth something like a C plus or a minus, B minus, only because it's not because I don't trust what they are. Tylan Wallace, Tez Walker, and as of right now, LeJontay Wester. It's just that we don't know much about them playing in long-term stints in replacement of one of those top three guys. We understand that Tez is a deep threat, and we saw that in full effect last season, at least for one play. We know that Tylan Wallace is a clutch catch type of guy. We saw that last season, and we know that LeJontay Wester has all of the upside that you would want in a guy who's going to bring up the rear in that sixth wide receiver spot. I don't see anybody overtaking those six unless something devastating happens, play on words. But I think that I give that room right now a I'm gonna give it an A minus. Um, Not because I don't like the group. I just give it an A minus. I had to give it something higher than a B plus. I give it an A minus simply because the wide receiving room right now, it is the best collection of talent that we've had in the Lamar Jackson era. There's not a whole lot we can complain about, with the exception of never really getting that big bodied wide receiver. When I say big bodied, I'm talking about the 6'3" or above guy, 215 pounds, that type of guy. DeAndre Hopkins is a big wide receiver, but he's not that tall. He's like 6'1", something like that. And, long arms, good hands, all that kind of stuff, but he's older. So I can't push them all the way up to an A or A plus. I do give them A minus as a collective. Now, the real point of contention for this Baltimore Ravens offensive roster is the offensive line. When I look at the tackles, your starters are Ronnie Stanley and Roger Rosengarten. I give them an A. When you look at the depth, Note Boom, and as of right now, you're going to have Carson Benson, probably definitely as the other tackle backup. I give those dudes probably a B minus. And so the tackle depth, I'm somewhat okay with. It doesn't make me as nervous. I don't want to test it necessarily, but I'm not as afraid of testing it as in years past. We understand that Vincent is a rookie coming from Alabama A&M, and the level of competition, is different in the SWAC. I think that's where he played. I think that's the division. But I do think he has all of the athletic traits, all of the gifting to be a good tackle. And as long as we don't have to test his ability year one, I think he's exponentially better in year two. But um, but as a depth piece, a guy who's just there to learn and grow and fill in those games where at the end of the season where you have nothing to gain, nothing to lose, I would love to see him. But so I give the tackle room. Let me bump it down to a B plus. I give it a B plus. I like Ronnie. I like Roger Rosengarten, but Ronnie's injury history still has me a little concerned. I know. Hey, what's going on, sir? You doing all right this morning? Glad to see you checking in, Raven 76, Raven 76. Appreciate you for checking in. And so, so Ronnie Stanley's injury history is a concern. I know he played a full 19 games, solid, good contributor. But when I'm looking at the depth and we're talking about avoiding devastation, that is a concern. So I give the starting and the depth at tackle a B plus. When we go inside, and let's look at Linderbaum, and I guess Sumac is his backup. I'm gonna just give it an A. Linderbaum is typically healthy, typically available. Um, so I don't have any questions about that. But when I say interior, I'm typically talking about the guard. When we look at our left guard and our right guard, right? Let's start with Falele first. When we look at the starters, I'm gonna go ahead and pencil in Voorhees as the starter as of right now, and Daniel Falele is the other starter. So I give the starters. I can only give them a C plus. And I give the starters a C plus because we don't know what we have in uh Voorhees. I know he's played okay to goodish, okay to goodish, but I don't have a lot of confidence in what we don't know, right? We don't have a 17 game sample size. We don't have 10 game sample size of Voorhees. He missed his whole first season. He got hurt again in his second season. Now, again, he is 2 years removed basically from that Achilles injury. So he should be rounded into his real self, but we don't know what that is. Okay. We don't know what that is. So there's a question mark there. So the only thing I can give our offensive guards as a starter a C plus. Yes, Falele did get better going down the season. He is in a contract year, which probably means we should be able to see his best. But we don't know what kind of shape he's going to come in at. We don't know if he's going to improve his footwork, if he's going to improve his technique. We saw multiple times last season, where he was standing still, he was missing blocks. But hey, something and somebody must have graded him out pretty high because he was a Pro Bowl reserve, right? Which does speak to his level of improvement over the course of that season. So starters, I have to give it a C plus only. Backups, right? Well, right now, if we thought and or considered that the third round pick Emory Jones would have been in competition for one of those starting roles, specifically the left guard position, he's not. Everything that you read and hear about Emory Jones and his shoulder injury, he's out into training camp, which means he does not have any ability to gain any ground on whoever would be ahead of him. And again, right now, that's Voorhees. So we can't even include Emory Jones as depth because we don't know where he is when training camp gets here in the recovery and healing process. So we can't even include him. So right now we got C plus starters. Again, I'm not banging on Daniel Falele. He's a 19 game starter from last season. You can't get much more qualified than that, right? And 19 games of starting experience at a new position should bode well for what we see him do in 2025. But we're talking about the depth now. So you got to cancel out Emory Jones for right now. So that leaves a guy like Bullock, who was a UDFA from last season, Ben Cleveland, who was brought back on a minimum deal. But if everything from the DUI arrest from this offseason is validated, and there is no reason to think that it's not, he's going to be suspended. Let's just talk truth. Ben Cleveland will be suspended this season between 2 and 6 games. And so that's going to make him what? Unavailable. And then I can't get too excited about Ben Cleveland. I understand the business of it, bringing him back on a vet minimum deal. And in some aspects, because of his experience, a less than vet minimum deal. I know it was business and it makes business sense to do it, right? But if he's suspended, he can't contribute no way. And then we have 4 years of a sample size that says that Ben Cleveland couldn't beat out for whatever the reason. We understand that he was in John Harbaugh's doghouse for sure, but he couldn't beat out the injured Voorhees to get into that starting spot last season. He couldn't beat out Patrick McCarry, who I guess played well in some aspects when he got his shot, and he couldn't overtake Daniel Falele, who did have some struggles last season. And so there's no reason for me to be excited about Ben Cleveland, right? So when we're talking about depth, we just X'd out both the guard depth. So all we have really is uh, Voorhees. Yeah, I agree. 70. I'm gonna call you 76. That makes it easy. I agree, 76. I think Ben Cleveland does have potential, but we've had 4 years to see his potential. And for whatever the reason, I listen, here's what's crazy, right? We know if you get in John Harbaugh's doghouse, it's really hard to get out. Right? We know that. But with with Daniel Falele's struggles last season, is John Harbaugh that stubborn that wouldn't give Ben Cleveland a chance? Because he didn't. But like I said, Ben Cleveland can't be counted as depth right now anyway, because he's going to be suspended this season because of this arrest. And so right now, all we have, and unless somebody knows of another name that's on this roster that you trust in, all we have is Voorhees and Falele, and I can only give that a C plus. We literally have no depth at interior offensive line. So I do foresee the Baltimore Ravens looking to some looking to add some veteran depth at that guard position. And tomorrow that leads into our tomorrow's conversation, okay, where we're going to talk about depth at positions that still have need. And so right now, the interior offensive line is the greatest concern for the Baltimore Ravens offensive roster because all we have interior is Voorhees, who does have an injury history. Okay. So let's jump to the defense side of the ball. Remember, still talking about Destination Santa Clara, February 8th, 2026. What's our slogan? Be there. Be there. That's what I'm saying to the Ravens. They have to be there. And that leads into Saturday's conversation. Like we're going to be talking about Destination Santa Clara all this week. And Saturday conversation is going to be a big conversation. And I'm probably going to try and see if I can bring you guys in live, those of you who want to talk about it. But let's keep it moving. Defensively, let's start in the trenches, and then we'll end up in the secondary, which is where we started today's conversation with the news of Darius Washington. When we look into the trenches, we understand that interior defensive linemen, we have two guys missing from last year's roster, Michael Pierce and also Brent Urban, right? Now, Brent Urban did not play a whole lot, but when he did get in, he was effective, right? And so our starters, Metabike, Travis Jones, Broderick Washington. I'm going to give that group an A minus. I know you've been like, what? Belonja, you've lost your mind. They're clearly an A plus group, not with Broderick Washington. Broderick Washington has been a question mark for me since he got his payday. Sometimes it's hard to even know that he played. I'm not banging on the dude. I don't know the dude personally, of course. So I'm not judging his character as a person, but I'm talking about his football production, his football on-field presence. Sometimes it's really hard to notice. Right, right. I agree, Mike B, for sure. We do need more linemen. Um, And so when I think about the interior defensive lineman, A plus Meta BK, although I got some questions, he didn't look the same after he got paid. Travis Jones, I'm gonna give him an A plus for what he's done in his 4 years. Well, his 3 years, he's come along really well. But Broderick Washington, I can only give a C plus. That brings the average of that group down, but I still give the group holistically an A. Now, when it comes to depth, those are starters. When it comes to depth, we don't have any. Not really. Oh, you know what? I forgot about Aeneas Peoples. Listen, Aeneas, forgive me. I forgot about Aeneas Peoples. I'm excited about this guy. I really am. I'm really excited about the potential for Aeneas Peoples to be a disruptor in that middle. So he's a I can only give him a B right now. You know why? We don't have any evidence of what he can do at the NFL level. We know what he did in college, but we don't have any evidence of what he could do at the NFL level. So as a depth piece, I can only give him a B. So in the interior, there is some concern, right? And so when we're talking about avoiding devastation, right? The only thing that can devastate a Super Bowl contending team other than when dudes fall off, right? If dudes fall off of what's expected of them, that can be devastating. But what can certainly derail a championship level team is injuries. And we know that well in Baltimore. But so when it comes to starting and depth, without that veteran depth, I know there are some dudes out there that could be potentially brought in to kind of solidify the depth. But right now, we don't have those guys in house. And so I have to give the group holistically a B because an injury to the starter could be devastating for the Baltimore Ravens. It could be a huge factor that gets us off course from reaching Santa Clara, right? And so there's a theme going on here. Interior offensive line is a huge question, right? An injury to a starter is devastating. Interior defensive line depth is a question. An injury to a starter could be devastating, and it could get us off course from reaching Santa Clara, right? So those are some areas that we need to give some attention to. All right, let's go to the outside linebacking position. Okay, I'm gonna give the group as a whole an A minus. Okay, I thought about a B plus, but I'm gonna give it an A minus only because I upgraded it only because we did lead the league in sacks last season. Everybody who was anybody last season is returning. Odafe Owe, Kyle Van Noy, Adisa Isaac, although we didn't see anything from him much last season. Tavius Robinson, who I think is gonna have a solid season this season. David Ajabo, who we really don't get much from. We'll talk about him on another day. Mike Green, the new addition, the exciting addition. Am I missing somebody? Odafe, Calvin Oy, Mike Green, Adisa Isaac, Tavius Robinson. I got everybody. I got everybody. So Mike Green is the only addition. So I'm gonna give the whole group as a whole an A minus because we know what they can do. We know that they've been productive. And then the addition of Mike Green is probably what bumped it up. Um, Yes, sir, JB. Buffalo did make Broderick Washington look crazy. Unfortunately, they did. They did, JB. You're spot on with that assessment. They did have him on skates, and so that's why I have a question mark with that interior defensive line. And so again, edge rush position, I'm giving it an A minus, and that's just based on the potential that Mike Green could be a huge difference maker for that group. And so starting and depth is solid. Okay. There's no question. And then we understand that there is a potential. There's some buzz, some rumor, whatever you want to call it, around Jadeveon Clowney possibly reunifying with the Baltimore Ravens. And that for me would bump it up to an A. Not an A plus, just an A. But that would upgrade it a little bit. But that means somebody would have to go. All right. Excuse me. Let's jump into the interior linebacker position. Okay. We only have one starter that you can really, really pencil in, and that's Roquan. Trenton Simpson was the starter last season, but played himself out, right? With some veterans coming in to take his spot, Malik Harrison, Chris Board, and the crew. And that's a bad sign for me. When you are in your second season and you are expected to kind of assume the position, and for whatever the reason, whether you were overwhelmed, whether it was too much, I don't know what the deal was with Trenton Simpson. I don't know what had him off kilter last season, but he played himself out of or off of the field. And so I can't just count him in as a plus this season. Will he start? Probably, right? You're not going to get rid of a third year guy who you still control his contract. But I think the depth at interior linebacking position, I think I can give the whole group a B plus. And I give the whole group a B plus simply because you don't know what you're going to have in Trenton Simpson. If Trenton Simpson had been a full season starter, I would give the group an A minus. But I'm going to knock it. Matter of fact, I'm going to knock it down to a B. I'm going to knock it down to a B as a group because I don't have a second starter. And then I don't know who is going to outplay or outperform another person to get into that starting spot. Will the Ravens add another veteran at the interior linebacking position? Possibly. But right now, there's a question who plays beside Roquan Smith. There's a lot of buzz and excitement around Teddy Buchanan. He is everything that Trenton Simpson was said to be. He's fast. He can cover. He can do a lot of good things as an athlete. So I think he will absolutely compete with Trenton Simpson. I can't remember the guy we brought in free agency to play linebacker, but I think he's going to be more of a special teamers. Jay Higgins, I think, has a potential to make this roster, but interior linebacker, man, I can only give a B right now. And matter of fact, you know what? Let me knock it down to a B minus, right? Only because there's too many questions. Will we bring in a vet? Who's going to start? Everybody's young other than Roquan. And even Roquan got off to a sluggish, slow, um, off his normal performance kind of start. So um, the middle of this defense has some questions: interior offensive line and inside linebacker. Let's jump to the secondary. Let's start outside first. So, cornerback Hump coming in healthy, train versus rehab. Nate Wiggins coming in healthy, train versus rehab. Awuzie coming in healthy, train versus rehab. Awuzie is going to be the replacement as of right now for Brandon Stevens. And if he can just be in the right place, right time, and get his head turned around, it will be an upgrade. Okay. So the three guys I'm identifying as starters, I'm going to give that room an A minus. I'm kind of hesitant to give high grades because anytime you bring a new guy into a new system, there are some questions of adjustment, that kind of thing. So I'm going to give the starters an A minus. And then when we look at the depth, you got JAD, who's often injured. So I'm going to set him into the last position at cornerback. You got Longerbeam, who's a guy who I think positions himself to be a slot corner for sure. You got Bilal Coney. And then I think that's it, unless I'm missing somebody. So I'm going to give the starters and the depth as a whole, I'm going to give the whole group a B. Because we got some high-end starters, Hump and Wiggins, and then got some adjustment for Awuzie, and then we got some young talent at corner and an often injured JAD. So I think there is another need for a vet in that room, but I don't know. I don't know what the Baltimore Ravens will address. Right? Um, I would be okay with walking into the season with the group as it is, but any type of injury to one of the starters could have a devastating type of impact. And again, when you're on a Super Bowl journey, you got to have solidified depth. Okay. So the theme is the interior offensive line, interior defensive line, the inside linebacking position, straight down the middle has some questions. That leads us back to where we started with the Ardarius Washington injury. What is that in the defense? The interior. Safeties are the interior of the secondary. And with Ardarius Washington going down, I'm going to have to knock this room down to the starters. If it's Starks and Hamilton, A plus. No. I'm gonna give it an A. I know what Kyle Hamilton is. I don't know what Malachi Starks is going to be at the league level. So I'm gonna give it an A, maybe an A minus. But then behind them, I have to give it a C plus. So the room as a whole, I got to give a B minus. Not because Hamilton's not great, but because his running mate as of right now, Malachi Starks, is a rookie. And we don't know what that adjustment will be like. Okay. Behind him is a UDFA in Bo Braid and Sanusi Kane, 7th round pick. So I don't know what it would be like if one of those guys had to step into a starting role because of injury. That's what we're talking about. Avoiding devastation is being able to have depth to avoid to kind of supplement for a major injury. And so, man, what I'm seeing is a consistent thing that the interior for the Baltimore Ravens is the most vulnerable right now. And it could be the biggest derailment to a Super Bowl run. What you've seen, as we get ready to wrap up, what you've seen when you've seen teams make Super Bowl runs, whether you look at the end of the Patriots dynasty under the Tom Brady regime, whether you look at the Kansas City Chiefs run, Whether you look at the Philadelphia, 3 Super Bowls in 10 seasons, 2 of them chips, what you've seen, even the Rams visited the Super Bowl twice, the 49ers visited the Super Bowl twice, and what you've seen from them is the ability to avoid devastation with quality depth. There's no bigger case in point than when Carson Wentz went down. He was probably on pace to possibly capture an MVP, but I think he got hurt on a run play where he was back to pass, and then he ended up running, and I think he hurt his leg, and then he was out. And oh shoot, the greatest backup in NFL history. What is his name? Nick Foles. Nick Foles steps in, takes over, and leads them to the Super Bowl, defeating the Patriots. That's quality depth, right? That's quality depth. It's very, very rare that your backup quarterback can step in and hold it down while the starter is out, right? And so, and of course, a backup quarterback is much different than a backup corner. A backup quarterback is much different than a backup left tackle, something like that, because they touch the ball. The quarterback touches the ball on every single play. So as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy, we have a chance to compete, right? But do we have the adequate depth at the other positions to sustain a devastating injury, right? So I do foresee between now and June 2nd. Why do I say June 2nd? Because there's going to be some guys get released after June 1st. It's going to be a greater volume of player, I believe, that gets released post June 1st. And so I believe that we are able to pick some of those players out, because we absolutely need a guy at the safety position. We definitely need some talent in the interior offensive line, the guard position, and we definitely need another big body or two in the interior defensive line position. And then we have to wait and see what the rookie Buchanan does, and if Trenton Simpson has a bounce back off season and put himself back in contention to be a major contributor this season. And so that's what I got for you guys today, man. Appreciate you guys for checking in with the GM. If you have not hit the like button, please do so. If you have never subscribed, please subscribe. And we will catch you guys tomorrow, where we talk about All In. So listen, I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM.